welcoming you to the 7th and 9th sequel, the consecration of St. Philip's Mukono, the 1910 Uganda Diocese Synod, and the memorial cross for the Busega Holy Martyrs gets dedicated. All of these events in the year 1910. Welcome. I'm Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi, the author of these sequels. On the 6th of May 1910, this day was a Thursday, and it was Ascension Day. You know, after 40 days after Easter, the ascension of Jesus Christ into heaven, so that Holy Thursday in 1910 fell on Thursday the 6th of May 1910. And that was the date which was chosen for the consecration of St. Philip's Mukono. Now, Bishop Tucker liked these gates. You will find out his ordinations were on either Trinity or the day of Pentecost. You will realize he used to consecrate churches on those important gates, the saints' dates. So it is no surprise that even St. Philip's Mukono consecration fell on such an important spiritual gate, the day on which the Lord Jesus returned to heaven, as far as the memorial of the year 1910 was concerned. However, on that day, it rained cats and dogs. The rain went on and on and on and on, and the records show that it rained up to 11 a.m. in the morning. It was still raining. However, the Kabaka designate, Chua II, did arrive immediately after the rain, and he was accompanied by his chiefs, Katikiro, Apolokagwa, and the consecration service had to delay. It actually began at 1 p.m. and it began with the singing of Psalm number 24. Now, the church designer, that original design of St. Philip's Mukono, the designer was a priest, a European priest called the Reverend D.H. Cassion. And he made every effort to be there on the day of consecration, but it couldn't happen. As the consecration was happening, he was just arriving at Mombasa. However, I thank him for trying, because you see, unlike Namirembe Cathedral, the current cathedral, whose architect, Professor Arthur Pite, was alive when the church was consecrated. I know it was just after the World War, but he made no effort, neither then, nor before, or not even thereafter, because he died in 1935, many years, almost more than 20 years after the consecration of the church. He never made an effort to visit Uganda, to visit Namirembe, to visit the church he designed. So that's why I find it very important to celebrate the Reverend D.H. Cassion for trying, because really, if he was at Mombasa, then it means he had really tried. But you never know with these sea travels, because you see, at the time they were traveling by sea. You can never know what delayed him. So Bishop Alfred Tucker consecrated the new church building, setting it apart for the worship of the Almighty God, and it was given the name St. Philip. Now, don't ask me why then is it called St. Philip and St. Mark today. As we go into the future, we shall arrive at the sequels that will then show us how the church got another name. But for now, as it is being consecrated, it has only one name, St. Philip's Church, Mukono. The sermon that day was delivered by, or was given by the Lord Bishop, the Bishop of the Diocese of Uganda, Bishop Alfred Tucker. And in his sermon, he compared the living church, which is you and me, the Christians. He compared us to the building church structure, or to the church building structure. And in fact, let me quote. There is somewhere he said, as bricks had to be bought to build the church, so does souls, so does souls have to be brought to the building, that is the church building, so as to grow the church of God. In other words, we have to attend church so that our souls can grow in Jesus Christ's name. That was basically his sermon. I don't want to go into much of it, but it is recorded. It is there in the archives of the church at UCU in Mukono. It is well filed. Now, collections, or call them offertory, on that day was a lot of money. A whooping 230 rupees. In those days, that was a lot of money. Anyway, after the service, there was a luncheon and later a tea party. All these were at the residence of Sechibobo Hamumukasa at Nasuti. The Kabaka designates Chua II, after all of that, left Mengo and left I don't know why I'm saying Mengo, left Nasuti, and he headed for Mengo, and he was accompanied by Sekibobo, and they traveled all the way to the border of Chagwe and Chadondo, which is River Namave. By the way, where is that river? Where is River Namave? If you didn't know that there was a river there, wait until it rains. Then that's when God shows you that there was once a river here, and whoever corrupted the area is to blame. Anyway, let's move on. So much for the opening of the church in Mukono. Let's now move on to the church synod. The Synod of the Uganda Diocese for the year 1910 opened on Saturday the 12th July 1910 and went on to Wednesday the 16th of July 1910. And this was at Namirembe, the CMS Mission Center, of course, which now had also held the cathedral. At this synod, there was a lay missionary who acted as the secretary. As a matter of fact, he was not acting. He was an appointed secretary by the synod. And his name was C.W. Hattersley. And therefore, he caused reports to be read out. And 5 major reports during this synod were communicated to the delegates. I've earlier said that there were about 260 delegates who attended, and they were coming from as far as Mboga in the Congo, from as far as Kavirondo in western Kenya, and from as far as Nasa, which is currently northern Kagera region of Tanzania. The reports were from the theological board. So the theological board gave a report. I wonder these days, do theological boards give reports? Really? Okay. Then there was a report from the Board of Mission. Yes, that one, yes. Then there was a report from the Board of Education. Yes, very much indeed. Then there was a report from the Estates Board. Yeah, matters to do with property and land. Yes. And then lastly, the 5th report was a report from what they called the Women's Council. Now, on each of the synod days, Madame Kate Cook, the wife of Dr. Albert Cook, entertained the delegates with a tea party in the evening. And that means that there were 5 great evening tea parties. That's why I must celebrate this woman, the lady matron of Mengo Hospital, Lady Kate Cook. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for celebrating the delegates, for celebrating with the delegates, and for welcoming them into the capital. Today, when there is a diocesan synod, and now let me talk about the synod, which is always held at Namirembe, because it can only be the Namirembe diocesan synod. Whenever they see it, I see it is the treasury of the diocese that prepares a luncheon for them. Now, what a comparison, that more than 100 years ago, a mere individual could give a tea party to all the delegates single-handedly as a matron of Mengo Hospital. Where did this kind of hospitality go, that today the treasury has to pay for the lunch? There are no voluntary people coming up. Anyway, that is as far as the comparison goes in the entertainment of the guests. Now, the conference went on, and they passed several resolutions, and they are important for us to go through. For example, an advisory council was set up, made up of 3 archdeacons, or all the archdeacons at that time. So there was the Venerable Herbert Walker, Archdeacon of Uganda Diocese. Then there was the Venerable John Jamieson Willis, that was the Archdeacon of Kavirondo. And then there was a very brand new Archdeacon, the Archdeacon of Busega, the Venerable Buckley. So that was an advisory council to the bishop and for the diocese. Number 2 among the resolution was that the tribunal for cases which had been set up in the 1908 diocesan synod, it was enlarged to include a referencing section. So it was also to be a tribunal of reference, whatever that meant. Then number 3, it was agreed that the Constitution have a new amendment in which it was to agreed that it could be changed. However, for any change in the Constitution to happen, 2/3 had to vote for that change. So that particular clause was inserted into the Uganda Diocese Constitution. Number 4, it was agreed that the native women who had married in church cease to use their personal names and take on the surnames of their husbands. Now, this was to be exactly the way it is done in England and elsewhere in Europe. I must confess that I'm one of those who were very, very unhappy with this clause. And let me confess that up to today, I don't allow my wife to call herself my name. She calls herself her name, and that her maiden name, and I also call myself my name. But it is now that I realize that it's constitutional, and I wonder whether this particular clause exists in the current constitution. But for 1910, that's when it changed, and women could no longer just call themselves their own maiden names. They had to take on the surnames of their husbands. I must say that it brought me problems once upon a time. I was in transit at the Schiphol airport in Amsterdam, and just in transit, coming from Entebbe, transiting to Italy. And I had a lot of problems with the European customs officers. They couldn't understand how, despite the fact that I had my wife, I had my children, that each one had a different name. They wondered what kind of a family. And I had to explain to them that these things are European things. We in Africa, everybody has a name. You don't have to necessarily call yourself your husband's name, and all the children call themselves your father's name. I told them that this is not as per culture in Africa. It was something that was imported. Well, they listened and they let us go, but I just wanted to let you know that it's a very, very important clause. It's coming up in 1910 in the Uganda Diocese Constitution. Whether you are like me and you don't believe in it, or you do, there you are. It was constitutional as far as 1910 Uganda Diocese was concerned. Item number 5. The last funeral rites, the Baganda call it Orume period, was shortened from 2 weeks to only 3 days. Pending investigations on whether to ban it, by the next synod. So the next synod would be in 1912. They were considering to ban these last funeral rites, orumbe. And this is when I got to know that it used to take a very long time, 2 weeks. So they shortened it to only 3 days. And if you notice, today, people arrive on Friday evening, they spend the night, and by Saturday, come around lunchtime, it's over. So that means over time, it has even reduced to only 24 hours. I think it's even less than 24 hours. People arrive on Friday evening, and by Saturday lunchtime, it's all over. So now it's under 24 hours. It has even shortened, much bigger than when it was then. Anyway, the other item, number 6, was they agreed to excommunicate Christians as a disciplinary measure. Now, this is very common in the Roman Catholic Church. I'm very surprised that the Native Anglican Church had such a clause in their rules or in the constitutional amendments, the resolutions of the Uganda Diocese of 1910, agreeing to excommunicate Christians, that you are no longer part of us. You go away. You have committed such and such a crime. Very unique resolution. Number 7, a resolution that warned the protectorate government of Uganda civil servants to honor Sunday as a day of rest. It means they were busy working. If I was to bring this resolution into our situation today, it's more of the business community. The business actually is ever closed on Sundays. They don't work. But the business community work. As a matter of fact, I think it's the day they tap into the civil servants who are then free on Sundays to go and shop. So it's the opposite of what was happening then. The local business community today is the one who should be told, who should be warned to honor Sunday as a day of rest. And it's biblical. But then the new idea now is once you go to worship and after worship and you go and work, it's okay. But I think as per the Bible, it is not. And I'm very glad that the Uganda Synod of that time could address such issues. They are more of divine, they are more of ecclesiastic issues, but here they are in the resolutions of a synod being passed. Lastly, the 8th resolution was a vote of thanks to Bishop Wilkinson of North and Central Europe for donating a cross in memory of the 3 Busega holy martyrs. And so, with that resolution, let us then see what happened. During the synod on Tuesday, the 15th of July 1910, the service of officiating and dedicating to the glory of God the beautiful cross of silver granite in memory of the 3 martyrs of Busega, Lugalama, Serwanga, and Kakumba, which had been erected on the spot at Busega, the martyrdom spot. That dedication took place. So the synod had to break a bit. Yeah, it was donated by Bishop Wilkinson of Northern and Central Europe. So the synod delegates adjourned at 3:30 p.m. on that day, and they all went for the ceremony of dedicating the cross at Busega. Now they reached there at 5 p.m. in the evening, and many of the eyewitnesses of that martyrdom of 1885 were around in 1910. Henry Duta Chitakula, who was a priest by that time now, who was now a priest. Bartolomayo Zimbe, he was also now a priest, but is one of those who witnessed the martyrdom. Joshua Chiwamvu, there was Yairo Mutachala. So all those witnesses of the 1885 martyrdom witnessed the dedication of the cross. The event was made possible thanks to the 1905 visit of the University Missions Bishop of Zanzibar, the High Church Bishop, who helped to rediscover the Busega place after the shameful neglect by the Church Missionary Society led by Bishop Alfred Tucker of that time. And that is the sequel, the 79th sequel. May the good Lord bless us all.